Welcome back everyone to the State of the Nation. Now, finally, China managed to convince the United States to pause the 140% tax hike for Chinese goods entering the United States market, bringing it down to 30%, I think around 30 days, while China promised they will also reduce their taxes on US goods entering into the Chinese markets. However, last week, we were told by the Deputy Minister of Finance that negotiations between Sri Lanka and the United States is happening and all is well. But the numbers and data wise, well, the government is yet to bring in some clarity on that. We know that Sri Lanka's biggest exporter is the United States, and the largest exporting item is apparel. So with a slab of 44% with an additional base tax of 10%, meaning a collective 54%, what would it do to these sectors? Let's go to the data board. Tonight standing by is Vinod Varnasurya. Thank you very much, Vinod, for taking the time to do the analysis. Just take us through the numbers in terms of these taxes. How much are we looking at? And more importantly, what would this mean to our exporting markets?
Thank you, Mahieash. It's good to be on this side of the show. So if we dive into the numbers on Trump tariffs, now let's take the immediate data from last year. Now, United States is the biggest exporting market for us Sri Lankans, and exporting is one of the most major revenue generating ways for our country. So if you take the 2024 data, Mahieash, apparel sector, the value is $1.85 billion. I think apparel is the biggest export category in terms of exporting market, and then rubber follows with 327 million to the US last year, and then coffee, tea, spices around $77 million last year. Machinery follows with $66 million, around $66 million, and this list follows on, Mahieash. So now with the Trump tariffs, we are getting imposed of a 44% tariff. So if we compare the 44% value to the previous year's total value, let's make a comparison. We get 814 million for the apparel sector. Not an easy number. Rubber, 144 million. So these are not easy numbers, Mahieash. So I think negotiations should start right away, because the situation is dangerous. Because let's take a major sector like apparel. Now, apparel sector, especially in the Asian region, it's a very competitive market, and apparel sector brings so much revenue to the country. So let's take a major competitor for the apparel sector like Bangladesh. If they take the lead, if they go to the United States, and if they negotiate before us for a lower rate, there is a convincing reason for them to market their product for the buy in the US. And let's say the tariff comes to a lower level in their terms, and still the margin between the Sri Lankan product and the Bangladesh product might be less. It might be a medium margin, it might be a low margin. But if you take a country like Bangladesh, their production cost, their labor cost, everything's low, that they can offer a cheaper product to a cheaper price, a cheaper product to a cheaper price. And then the buyer will be convinced definitely. And especially in this Trump tariff situation, the alternatives for the US buyers might make them shift from one market like Sri Lanka to a cheaper and affordable market like Bangladesh. So this will create so many problems within our country, because apparel sector provides so many job opportunities, so many employment categories within the island. So the collapse of its export market, which is one of the most major revenue streams for them, can result in many pitfalls within our internal economy as well. So I think, Mahieash, as a solution for this, the government should take steps, immediate steps actually, to go and negotiate for lower tariffs, and also the industry leaders should embrace whatever is to come. So we are getting to know that the government is in positive talks with the United States. So we do not have yet tangible proof on that, but still we hope something good is coming. So that's my analysis for you, Mahieash.
Absolutely, a lot of good data points that you and points that you made, Vinod, with regard to the taxation, and indeed the government really have to put their foot down and ask for a better price, like all the other countries are doing. All right, Vinod Varnasurya at the data board tonight. Thank you very much, appreciate it. Let's get some reactions, and joining me now is the Deputy Chairman of the Joint Apparel Association, Felix Fernando. Well, Mr. Fernando, appreciate your time. Your sector is one of the industries that will be impacted heavily if those tariff talks with America doesn't go as planned. The government keeps saying nothing to worry, we will be safe. Is that the same that you are hearing from your buyers and clients in Northern America?
Yes, Mahieash, there are two parts for this question. First is the government says nothing to worry. Second part is your question is about our buyers, what their reactions are. Right now, the government has spoken to them few times, US government, and we were told that within these 90 days, US government and Sri Lankan government will be able to come to some agreement, a mutual agreement, where both countries will be able to get the mutual benefits. What it means is, like what the government says currently, they have reached to the US and given some proposals, especially importing refined oil plus a few other things, so that the trade deficit will be reduced. Right now we have about 2.7 billion of trade deposit, so to be reduced to more or less zero. If that works, I don't think we'll be having problems. But at the moment, although this 90 days grace period is there, we have seen how the buyers in the Northern America has reacted. So what they are saying is that they are unable to bear this additional 10%. Even for this 10%, they want Sri Lankan exporters to bear the cost.
Mr. Fernando, if in an instance where Trump doesn't budge and if he implements the full 44% tariffs for exports from Sri Lanka, what does that means to your business?
That's a very tricky one. It could work anyway, either way, because what we have requested was like maybe at least to keep our duty on par with India. But even what your question is, even if that doesn't work, but still there are a small silver lining there as well. All depends on how Vietnam, China and Cambodia, how US will treat them with regard to the tariff rates. Right now we have seen all these three countries tariff rates are higher, but we know also now even Trump yesterday they have agreed for 3 months grace period, plus Vietnam is working very hard with the US government to come to an agreement. Supposing if Trump doesn't give any exceptions, any exemptions to China and Vietnam and Cambodia, then the situation going to look different, because Sri Lanka is in a bit of an advantageous situation. Now to tell you frankly, now even some of the Chinese delegations are coming to Sri Lanka. They want to talk with Sri Lankan exporters because they fear even in the future that maybe the same problem could occur again. So they are taking backup. So I believe that the Chinese delegations, they may be approaching different countries in Asia in order to make sure that they will not lose anything, because if the China can shift some of their orders here, or if they can shift some of the factories or some of the investments bring over here, so that's going to help the export industry in Sri Lanka. But in case if we will be the only country that left out from any trade agreements with US, that's going to be very hard and it's going to be very harsh for the industry.
Indeed, Mr. Fernando, isn't this a good opportunity for the Sri Lankan exporters to look for other markets around the world? They have been fixated in one market or two, but now doesn't it make sense to diversify and go into markets which we are not well known, like the African continent?
The reason, Hamish, is that why we've been limited to few markets. First of all, the buying power. Ever since we started the apparel exports, USA followed by European Union, that time even the Britain included, they were the world's largest consumers of apparel. Unlike China, India and some of the other countries now are coming to the top of the consumers. So therefore, what happened was we were more focused on US. Even today, still US is the world's largest apparel consumer. So we cannot, I don't think that we are unable to move away from US completely. But that doesn't mean that we can go to the African countries. I doubt, because Sri Lanka doesn't have a large human capital, human resources to make cheap garments. Right now, whatever we are sending to US, whatever we are sending to European Union, we are able to get a good price, in the sense because we are doing some value-added garments. So we are, all of a sudden, if we move to countries like African countries, it will be tough. However, there are few other countries we haven't gone very well. Countries like South Korea, Japan, Australia, Canada, even China. Our market share in those countries are very less. Also, we have the GSP Plus with EU. In EU also there are several countries, more than 50% of the countries in EU out of 27 or 28 member countries, we are not exporting to them, or it's very, very minimum. So there is a huge chance for us to approach these countries, but the reason again being why we haven't doing is, why we haven't done well, we have been requesting the governments, various governments, to get into some free trade agreements or some beneficial agreements to Sri Lankan exports, not only for apparel. Because most of the countries who are exporting, who have captured those markets, have captured those markets due to duty concession. I mean, country like Bangladesh, since they are LDC country, they can send whatever they want, regardless country of origin, the fabric country of origin. But if now the governments can push for us to get into different FTAs with such countries, then of course we are able to access such markets sooner.
Well, thank you very much. We have to leave it at that. That was the Deputy Chairman of the Joint Apparel Association, Mr. Felix Fernando. Appreciate it.